Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Alertus webinar series. My name is Sharice Ruan, Marketing Specialist at Alertus Technologies. During this presentation, Ryan Oakley, National Sales Director, and Rodrigo Rosal, Client Services Director, will provide insight on the Alertus system with a focus on mass notification system codes, mandates, and compliance. I do want to mention that registration is full for today's webinar. I want to apologize in advance for any trouble logging into or potentially getting kicked off of today's webinar. We will be sending out a recording of the webinar to all registrants in case anything happens or you have to drop off for any reason. Feel free to submit your questions during the webinar at any time, and they will be addressed during the Q&A session at the end of this presentation. The webinar is being recorded and will be shared with you all after today's session. If you have any questions after this presentation, please email marketing@alertus.com. Now I'd like to turn it over to Ryan.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sharice. And appreciate everybody joining us this morning or afternoon to learn a little bit more about the Alertus solution, and then also discuss a little bit of codes, mandates that are really driving mass notification, both as an organization but also as a requirement for some of your newer buildings and deployments. So with this webinar, we're going to focus in on those codes, but we're going to first introduce you to Alertus solution. If you haven't seen this, you get an idea of how we're able to quickly and effectively notify everybody within your organization. We're going to talk a little bit about the challenges you have, the challenges we've helped our customers solve related to notification and emergency, review the solution briefly, and then really jump into the codes and mandates. And Rodrigo has joined me today to really talk about that. Rodrigo, leading our implementation team and our support team, really experiences these codes on a daily basis, works with you as customers to get these implemented and be code compliant solutions. So he's got a lot of great insight into those specific codes and how they're implemented in the real world. So a quick background on Alertus technology. We've been we were established in 2002. We're headquartered in the DC area, so we've been around for quite a long time. And being in the DC area, we've been very compliant, working with the IPAWS program and a lot of the codes and mandates coming out of Washington DC to standardize mass notification. Really a pioneer and leader in integrated audiovisual facility alerting. So that's really the key part, is we provide notification capabilities within your building to notify people of an emergency. We've also expanded to provide outdoor mass notification systems. So really indoor, outdoor areas of your building, be able to notify those people effectively. We're really focused on large, high-efficacy buildings, but the solution does scale down to smaller organizations as well. We generally serve corporate industrial, higher education, healthcare, K-12, local government, and military organizations, DoD. So a lot of these organizations have large numbers of people, facilities, buildings that need to be notified in the event of an emergency. So here's the challenge that our customers are presented with, and that's how do I get the notification out, get it out effectively, and utilize all of these modes that I have available. Technology is there to take over a VoIP phone, to integrate with the fire panel and use those speakers. The codes have been modified to allow us to use those speakers. Digital signage systems. You might have multiple digital signage systems across your organization depending on when the building was built, which organization purchased it. PA systems. You may have folks with mobile devices that you want to be able to reach out and notify. But all of these have disparate technologies. They're owned and managed by different people, and it's really difficult to coordinate those effectively during an emergency. So how do you really use all these pieces of and assets that you have within your organization to notify? Even more, we've talked to a lot of customers that have tried to use all these notification assets to really get the word out, and they share with us that it takes up to 30 minutes to get those all activated. You have to really coordinate a lot of people. It's really difficult to get the message exact and specific, because each person interprets or says it differently depending on how they read the message. But the time factor is really the challenge. When you've got the average active shooter event going 4 to 7 minutes, if it takes you 30 minutes to get that message out, it's unacceptable. You need to be able to get it out within seconds, and Alertus provides the capabilities to coordinate all these technologies and activate that message very quickly and efficiently to get that message out in an emergency. So let's step back a little bit and talk a little bit about emergency mass notification and the market and the solutions that are out there. So emergency mass notification provides methods that facilitate a one-way dissemination or broadcast of messages to one or more groups of people, notifying or alerting a group of individuals of a pending or existing emergency situation. So that's kind of the overall, let's get the word out, let's blast that out to everybody that needs to know. Then you've got two areas. You've got unified facility notification is really where Alertus focuses in providing audiovisual notification capabilities within your buildings through multiple modes to make sure everybody's notified. So this is different technologies, different ways to deliver it, audiovisual. That's where we're really focused on coordinating that within your facilities and giving you a single point of activation. Then you've got what a lot of times organizations traditionally refer to or think of as mass notification, which is personal notification. This is sending a text message, email, making a phone call to notify people on their mobile device. Well, that is a component of the strategy, and generally research has shown that it's about 30 to 50% effective in notifying people, so it is a good component. We've chosen to integrate with all the personal notification services out there. So if you've got a service, you're considering one, the Alertus system integrates and ensures that there's a single point of activation and provides the ability to notify those folks, but then also supplements and provides facility notifications so you reach the other 50 to 70% of the people that maybe didn't sign up or opt into the phone notification capabilities. So really the combination there is what makes sure everybody's notified within your buildings. And we'll talk about some of the challenges and why this combination is really effective for notification. Some of the demand drivers and why in audiovisual this approach is best is because a lot of our customers come to us, there's no way to notify. Maybe they've got a building or facility that has no PA system, they've got no technology to notify, no control other than to have somebody that's at that facility go in and maybe run down the hall with a bullhorn. So that's the most extreme case, but pretty much all of our customers have a few of those facilities that are that way. We can help you with that. Building's not staffed 24/7. Maybe you've got a security staff that's trained, ready to handle emergency from 8 in the morning to 8 at night. But how do you handle emergency at 2 in the morning? How do you notify into that building when there might be a few occupants, but not everybody? Special needs. So when we talk about the codes, ADA accessibility is a big part of this. And you'll see that that audiovisual aspect is key. A lot of times we'll start with customers that have those that are differently abled, visually impaired, hearing impaired, that need assistive technologies. We'll a lot of times start with that, and the system will grow out because it's very quick and easy to deploy to really notify everybody. A lot of environments, so you've got your corporate, industrial, manufacturing, any of those kind of areas. Areas where cell phones aren't allowed. A lot of our customers, in manufacturing, you're not allowed to have them on the manufacturing floor because it's an OSHA violation. Healthcare, maybe you're not allowed to have it around sensitive equipment. DoD, federal government, there's top secret areas where you have to leave your cell phone outside of those facility areas. So a lot of times this comes up. Difficulty reaching visitors and contractors. It's just not effective to try to get their phone number, put them in the system for a few days, a week, make sure to take them out. We want to be able to do audio-visual notification to your facility so that if they're in your buildings working, they're getting the message. So we're able to help you with your visitors, contractors, those kind of things. So to kind of sum it all up, audio notification, visual notification through multiple modes, and then of course as an emergency manager, security director, leader of your organization, education, engagement, and training is a very important component. So you get the technology in place, people know that when they get a computer pop up, they get a message on their phone, they get an announcement over the PA system, that's from your organization that indicates an emergency and they need to be trained to react accordingly. So to bring everything together, the Alertus solution provides a single point of activation. This doesn't mean you can only go to one location. You can go pretty much to any web browser, any mobile phone. You can use automated feeds. You can have panic buttons, but you can activate this very quickly and simply from one location and get all the technology assets to notify. Secondly, we can integrate with all notification assets. So if you've purchased things, you have technology already deployed within your organization, let's use that. Let's take advantage of that investment and use that as a notification device and make it quick and easy for you to activate that. And lastly, we help fill in the gaps. So what this means is if you've got locations, say like a loading dock, an area that when you test and educate, you find that that the message doesn't get there, we can supplement the system with alert beacons, panic buttons, LED marquees, those kind of things. So actually provide endpoints where there isn't an endpoint to notify your occupants. So we really provide a full-featured mass notification platform with a lot of options for notification, so you can build that out appropriately for your organization. So when it comes to codes and mandates, I'm going to do a quick introduction, and then Rodrigo's really going to get a little bit deeper into some of the details, how these codes impact your implementation of mass notification, and some things to keep in mind when you're doing your plan or implementing your mass notification strategy. So I'm going to start with a couple of the more specific codes. One is the UFC. If you're within the military, federal government, or DoD, this is a code that really provides a roadmap for when new buildings are built or renovated for how mass notification should be installed within a facility. And Alertus provides compliance solutions to work within the DoD and federal government constructs there. The second one really focuses on our higher ed clients, in which case the Clery Act, where everybody must be notified within on a campus within an appropriate amount of time for an emergency. It could be, it could be a crime that's occurring on campus, which case appropriate is a day or two. Well, when you have an active shooter or a tornado event, appropriate amount of time is minutes. So we provide solutions that can allow you to be compliant, get that message out within minutes. And the key is, you avoid any kind of fines that are associated with Clery Act, but more importantly, all the federal funding, so the millions, if not billions of dollars of funding for university research can be protected by complying with the Clery Act, and we can help you provide notification means to ensure everybody's notified quickly and efficiently. The last one, which is most applicable across all these industries, as well as every new building, every building that's built within mostly the United States, and also this code is adopted within Mexico, Central America, and a number of areas within Canada. That's the National Fire Protection Association. NFPA 72 is a code for how fire alarms are installed within a building. In 2010, they added a chapter which addresses mass notification and really expands and provides a roadmap for implementing mass notification within your buildings. Expands the use of the fire alarm so that you can use the fire alarm in new and innovative ways to notify occupants. So that provides really a guideline for implementing mass notification. And kind of at this point, I want to go ahead and turn it over to Rodrigo, because he'll really dive a little bit more into the details of NFPA. Oh, and before, sorry, Rodrigo, before I turn it over, ADA accessibility, federal law mandates that you provide accessibility, you notify all, depending on abilities. So that kind of has a undercurrent through all these rules and regulations that are mandates. So Rodrigo, I'd like to kind of turn it over to really get into a little bit more details on NFPA 72.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ryan. So as Ryan was just specifying, is the NFPA code is the overarching umbrella that all the other codes kind of take their lead from. They have been around for a very long time. I believe, if I remember correctly, they started after a big fire up in Boston almost 100 years ago, or a little bit further. And they basically have been at the forefront of creating a code and requirements list to make things safer for the public out there. And what we want to do here is we want to make sure that everyone understands that at this time, mass notifications are not required by this code. However, whenever a customer of yours or yourself, as being the lead, is thinking about getting a mass notification system installed in your facility, then the code actually takes into effect, because it dictates that whenever somebody wants a mass notification system installed, the code dictates that the Chapter 24 of NFPA 72 is required to be followed. That's what is going on at this moment in time. However, if anybody was lucky enough to attend NFPA conference up in Boston this year, there's actually been some movement that the mass notification systems may actually become a full requirement for any new building and any rehabs that are going to be going on. This has not been put into effect at this time, but I just want to make sure that everyone understands that it may happen in the future. So that's something that you might want to look out for.
Rodrigo, a little bit of experience from the field. I've heard of some AHJs, fire marshals, that have required new hospitals, say, because of their public use, to actually have mass notification, even though it's still optional. They've actually, some municipalities or local areas have required that. Have you seen some of that as well?
There have been quite a few municipalities and counties that I have encountered that actually require that, and they have been early adopters. However, I just want to make sure that everyone understands that at this time, it's not a full requirement unless your AHJ actually is the one that's pushing for it, or unless you as the facility manager or the emergency notification manager at your facility is requesting it.
Yep.
All right.
Perfect.
So, as the slide basically states, is that NFPA 72, and as Ryan stated earlier, is the over-encompassing code for fire alarms installations and how that fire alarm needs to actually work. As Ryan stated earlier, back in 2010, Chapter 24 was included, where it specifically spoke about mass notifications because they saw the writing on the wall and how mass notifications was definitely something that was going to be necessary, not just for fire alarms, but also for a code that needed to be able to administer different scenarios like active shooters, inclement weather, things like that. So that's what the Chapter 24 part of NFPA 72 was requiring. Now, I have gotten a lot of questions before from different customers and also from previous webinars that we've administered is, how do I actually go out and try to figure out how to implement this NFPA 72 Chapter 24 code? Now, within the code, there is a requirement for a risk analysis. That's something that I would recommend for people that are not too familiar with the NFPA 72 Chapter 24 code to go out and try to see what their options are for creating a risk analysis. What that risk analysis would allow you to do is be able to determine the exposure that you currently have based on your different modalities of sending out a notification. Some locations only have fire panels, so that would increase your exposure to anything else besides a fire alarm. Then you also are going to have a section of your risk analysis that's going to kind of pinpoint the scenarios that you need to be ready for. A lot of, at least in the United States, for higher educations, you want to be ready for inclement weather depending on the location that you're at, and also active shooters. Sadly, that's something that we've been dealing with a lot. And there's a couple other scenarios that I'm sure that per your location, per the facility that you are, would be more inclined to.
I've also heard a campus that, say, has a train line that goes nearby that transports gases or something like that, that would then make a, say, chemical spill a little bit higher on their priorities as a potential threat as well.
Exactly, and that's everything that the risk analysis would do for a location or a facility, that it would take into account their actual location, it would take into account all the different scenarios that have been very common into their facility, higher ed, military bases, different things like that. They all have different scenarios that will be more prevalent to them. And based off of that, they would make a suggestion of how to limit their exposure, and also what kind of modalities to be able to leverage that may or may not already be available at your facility, and be able to move on from there. What Chapter 24 distinctly states is that there's no one-size-fits-all for every facility. That's why the risk analysis is recommended, and that's why they also separate their mass notifications into different layers. So, for instance, what you're looking at right now is the 4 different layers that Chapter 24 separates their mass notification code into. Layer 1 being the immediate and intrusive alerting, which would be one-way voice notifications, two-way voice notifications, visible notifications, and textual digital displays. As Ryan mentioned earlier, and as you can see on our list or on our page, we have an alert beacon that would definitely be able to handle all of your layer 1 mass notifications. It has a strobe with 2 different colors that would get people's attention. It also has a audible alert that, based on NFPA code, also is able to get people's attention through an audible means. The code specifically states that audible notifications need to be, I believe, at least 64 dBs, or at least 15 dB over the ambient noise of the location or the facility. And if for some reason you get into a location like manufacturing plants or military locations where the ambient noise of that location happens to be over 100 dB, then they actually tell you to move away from a audible notification, because that would be too loud. People are not going to be able to hear it and tell it from the ambient noise, and that's why they move over to a visual notification. But the alert beacon does have the capability of having both. Then we move over to a layer 2, which is more of a wide area notification. That would be something on the lines of your high power speaker arrays, your high power speaker arrays, maybe some giant, or something that would be called a giant voice, which is the same thing. Maybe something that you might have in a stadium. You might have a giant LCD or LED screen that you might be able to leverage. So that's basically your wide area notification system. Still the same thing applies. You need to make sure that the noise to ambient noise ratio is still met most of the time. With a high power speaker array with a giant voice, that shouldn't be an issue, but make sure that you are able to apply the code to that. Then layer 3, distributed recipient MNSs. Those are your emails, your computer pop-ups, your smartphones applications, your reverse 911 automated dialing. Alertus does have that capability to do that. Ryan explained that we do have the capability of actually putting all those together, so that we do have that you do have the capability of having that one press of the button to have all of these layers turned on at the same time in a matter of seconds. And then finally, your layer 4 is your public alerting. Those radio, TV broadcastings, your Facebook, your Twitters, all of those social networks, your websites, anything else that you might have available out there to alert the public. All of these layers, NFPA code 72, chapter 24, basically requires that you hit at least 1, but they recommend at minimum 3. Mainly because having different modalities in all the different layers will allow you to hit as many people as possible with the same consistent message, to be able to get that message available to the public, available to the people that matter, so that they can go ahead and proceed based on those procedures that you have put in place, or based on the message that you specifically put out there for them. Now, based on those layers that we just discussed, Alertus is able to help you out with how that message is able to get out there consistently from one push of a button or from one specific activation. And that's basically what this diagram shows you, is that we're able to take in all the different notifications from NOAA weather alerts, from iPods, from CAP alerts, from RSS feeds, feed them through our server, put them out there to your different modalities that Ryan explained to you, where they are the wide area notifications, which is a high power speaker array, giant voice, your desktop pop-ups that we have available as well, your alert beacons that would allow to provide ADA notification, which is audio and visual notification to all of your locations, and also be able to integrate with your Twitter accounts, your Facebook accounts, your websites, and what have you. Now, because we've been talking about the NFPA code, which is usually up until 2010, specifically a fire alarm, fire-specific code, we want to get a little bit more in depth into how the Alertus system actually integrates with that existing fire panel. Now, there are a couple of different ways that we integrate with that fire panel. Main way is a very generalized. The fire panel provides us a dry relay contact, which activates a general alert to your facility through the Alertus message. So what that would mean is the fire panel would activate the Alertus system, and then the Alertus system would pass on a generalized alert saying that there's a fire at this building or at this specific location throughout all those different modalities and all those different layers that we've already spoken about. Now, a little bit more in depth in the integration that we have is actually being able to pull the code from the fire panel and be able to provide a little bit more specific information. Not just there happens to be a fire at this building, but more specific to the point of saying there was a fire detected by the smoke detector at this specific location within this building. Please act accordingly, or add in whatever other information that you want. Now, the way that we do that is we actually plug in to the fire panel through an RSS 232 port that the fire panel should have. We take in that information through that RS-232 port. We provide it to the server. The Alertus server is able to disseminate and basically take that information from the fire panel, decode it, be able to understand what is a fire, what is an emergency, what is a supervisory condition, what is just a trouble alarm on the fire panel, and based on some configuration that would have to happen on the Alertus system, be able to take in that information and activate accordingly. If it happens to be an alarm, it activates all the modalities that you want and that you have specified. If it just happens to be a trouble, maybe an email or maybe a small activation is sent over to your fire panel technicians or to your facilities managers. If it happens to be a all clear, or after a fire happens, the fire has been put out, the fire panel has been reset, it resets with no alarms, then the Alertus system is able to send out an all clear through those modalities as well. Now, once again, the key features to that integration, it allows you to expand the capabilities of the fire panel. So the last piece of integration that I actually skipped was that we are actually able to leverage the fire panel speakers that are already in throughout your facility. That's something that the code at NFPA actually allows us to do. It allows us to be able to leverage those speakers to use for mass notifications. Those speakers are something you guys have already paid for, you guys have already distributed throughout your facilities. So to be able to use them to distribute those mass notifications, all you would have to do is add in an extra wire, or I'm sorry, an extra 3 wires connected into your fire panel to be able to leverage those speakers from the Alertus system that you guys might use.
Rodrigo, I see the one that when they're tying into existing strobes and sounders. Let's talk a little bit about that. That usually comes up quite a bit. You know, there's different versions of strobes and sounders out there. Which ones can be used for mass notifications and which ones can't be used for mass notifications? How do you evaluate that?
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. First and foremost, as the code states, any strobe or any device that has been originally installed or used for the fire panel can be used by a mass notification system as long as neither that strobe or that speaker is labeled fire or alarm. I'm sorry, just fire. If it is labeled alarm or not labeled at all,
I've also seen alert.
Or alert, then it can be used for a mass notification system and can be leveraged as such. So once again, if you have distributed speakers or strobes that are currently being used by your fire alarm, as long as those strobes and speakers are not labeled fire, they can be leveraged by a mass notification system, just like Alertus, so that you don't have to buy new strobes. They can just be leveraged as well from that mass notification system. Thanks, Ryan.
Absolutely. Yeah, I bring that up because I was actually out at a DoD facility that they had an incident. They did a risk analysis and found out that, well, their strobes are labeled fire. They don't want to use those in that kind of an incident. So they actually went through and relabeled them so that they could also turn those on. Now they would mute the announcement that said fire if it was a mass notification, and then they would use another means for announcing what the actual emergency is. But they actually went through and relabeled every one of them so that they could use those in an event of emergency.
Yep, and that's what a lot of customers end up doing, because it's cheaper and easier to just relabel those strobes than it is to go out and buy brand new strobes and distribute them again, because you're just going to end up with countless strobes throughout your facility.
Yeah, definitely. And then getting back to Alertus, we're able to activate those remotely from any of the endpoints. You don't have to run somebody to the fire panel to make an announcement, turn on the strobes, those kind of things. So.
Yep. Getting back to what you were stating earlier, that's what Alertus does. It allows you to get all of those systems that you already have out there and already have paid for, put Alertus in, it becomes that glue and gives you that one piece of, of the puzzle that allows you to put everything out there in one situation and one modality and one quick setup.
Yep. Excellent.
So we've actually already discussed this. It's the fire panel control interface. It allows you to be able to take in those codes from the fire panel, distribute them out to all your different modalities, be it from originating from any type of pull station, a smoke detector, a water valve, or anything that the fire panel is connected to. As long as that fire panel sees that as an alarm, the Alertus system will be able to take that in and then activate all the different modalities that it's connected to. As you can see on the bottom, on the right-hand side, the alert beacon would be able to activate other strobes if you don't want to use your existing fire panel strobes, or you don't have those fire panel strobes that are labeled alarm or anything else other than fire. You would also be able to connect to other speakers or PA systems or giant voice systems that you already have. You would be able to leverage those to be able to get that same message out. And really, as Ryan mentioned earlier, voice over IP phones, desktop pop-ups, digital displays, mobile apps, all those different modalities to be able to get that same consistent message out there can originate from either the Alertus system through an RSS feed, a CAP alert, or anything like that, or originating from your fire panel through the Alertus system, sending that one consistent message out to everyone in your facility.
Rodrigo, I believe with the demo coming up, we're actually going to demonstrate that, where we pull a pull station and it tells the message that's actually disseminated, says exactly where the pull station was pulled.
Exactly. And I believe that will be our next slide after this. So really just to finish off the fire alarm integration, we have integrated with many different fire panel makers, as you can see on the slide here, namely Gamewell, GE, Siemens, Silent Night, Simplex, all those major ones. But really the main factor that you would need to ask yourself if you did want to have that type of integration is, does my fire panel have an RS-232 port that it outputs that code out of? If it does, it's about 99.9% sure that we would be able to integrate with it and be able to disseminate that message out to your entire facility. So, without further ado, let's get to the demo and we could talk a little bit further about how that message happened, how the facility was able to get notified, and how the integrations happens, and then we would get to your questions. All right, so, hi everyone. So we got a fire pull station right here. We got our fire panel right next to it, and it's integrated as the way that I was describing to the Alertus system. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull the pull station. It's going to activate the fire panel. Once that fire panel is activated, it sends that message to the Alertus system, which the Alertus system is going to read, receive, decode, and then activate the rest of the system per the configuration that we stated. So we have Mobile apps, we have voice over IP, we have alert beacon
Facility
flashing,
alert.
we have a
Fire alarm.
engine that
Training
actually
room. 1
activates
full station.
based on the alert beacon. We have an LED marquee. We have a
Facility
couple.
alert.
We have a
Fire
cable
alarm.
TV override. We
Training
have digital
room. 1
signage,
full station.
and I don't think anyone can see. We also have
Facility
desktop
alert.
opera.
Fire alarm.
So
Training room. 1 full station.
can you actually cancel that so people can hear me?
Facility alert. Fire alarm. Training room. 1 full station.
All right, so we manually canceled the message.
Facility
Which is
alert.
probably not
Fire
normally what
alarm.
would happen during an
Training room.
actual
1 full station.
emergency. But during an actual emergency
Facility
related
alert.
to fire panels,
Fire
what we
alarm.
normally will see
Training
is
room. 1 full station.
the fire panel will be deactivated because the fire would be dissipated. You would go in, reset the fire pull station that was used, then you would reset the fire panel. The resetting of the fire panel would then, after it boots up, it will notice that there is no more alarm. It may come into trouble depending on all the different systems that you might have out there. But once the fire alarm goes back and is no longer in a fire situation, the Alertus system can be configured to send an all clear. That really helps out so you don't have people out there still thinking that there's a
Facility
fire.
alert.
You don't have
All clear
miscommunication.
for event originating at training room 1.
Just letting that go ahead and finish.
Facility alert. Fire alarm. All clear for event originating at training room 1.
All right. So that allows you to have a simple message across the board that originates from the fire panel, both activate and set and let people know exactly where the location of the originating device is that actually is detecting that fire. And then once the scenario or the emergency has been appeased and there's no longer an emergency, as usually procedures dictate, the device will be reset, the fire panel will be reset, and once that fire panel is reset and there's no longer an emergency condition, the Alertus system can go ahead and send out another message that will let everyone know that's an all clear and everything is good to go.
So Rodrigo, what I think is really cool here is, there wasn't an extra step or protocol for emergency management. What happens generally in a fire, somebody pulls a pull station, that's already a behavior that's known. When the fire department confirms that the fire is gone, they go up to the panel, they're already trained to work and reset that. Mm-hmm. So really, actually, the messaging is happening based upon the events that are already going to happen during a fire emergency. So, I think that's really cool that we can kind of mirror human behavior, but also do the messaging and not have to have an extra hand in the mix, or somebody that has to remember to do that step.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of our first customers that actually helped with this integration specifically wanted to be able to just take that extra step of having somebody go on the PA system and manually announce that there was an alarm or there was an emergency at a specific location. It was actually a hospital, and what we did is we were able to take in those notifications from those fire panels that they had, be able to disseminate that message consistently throughout all of their paging, and so that it took the person out of the situation. It allowed the message to be clearly understood, because we all know that whenever you're in an emergency, whenever you're talking on a microphone, you're not 100% going to be speaking at a very monotone voice that people are able to understand you. And also, you may not have the right volume at the time. You may be yelling into it because you're in an emergency, you want to get out of there as quickly as possible, or there's a whole bunch of other factors. So what we did for that hospital is we were able to get their response time down, I believe, into within about a minute, mm-hmm. because that message was distributed through their entire facility, and they knew exactly where that origination device was being activated at, instead of having to go to the fire panel, look it up, then possibly even look at the, because the fire panels, what we didn't talk about is that a lot of fire panels have restrictions on the characters that they're able to use on the description. And what that limitation is usually at is about 24 characters. So what a lot of people have seen, if you're fire technicians out there or you've noticed fire panels, is that you'll see that there's a lot of acronyms that need to be deciphered, and not all acronyms are the same at every location. I mean, I've seen, NURS that stands for nurses station or nursery. It really depends on whether the person knows what that is or not. But if you have a system like ours that is able to take in this information, expand those acronyms out, everyone knows, because the same message is going to be going out to everyone. It's going to be spoken as nursery or nurses station, whichever one that the acronym is supposed to stand for at that location.
Great, yeah. I mean, converting that just to spoken language so that the average operator can respond, and not have to be trained in exactly how their fire panel is programmed is really critical.
Exactly.
Also, being able to activate the speakers and make an announcement without having to go to the panel. I was at a customer site the other day that before they implemented Alertus, they had an event right at the front door. There was somebody that had a gun. Well, the fire panel announcement point was on the other side of the front door. So nobody really drew short straws, and they just didn't get to use that.
Mm-hmm.
So a combination of, making that the information coming out of the panel more accessible, but then also making it easier and quicker to activate that panel during an emergency, I think is key.
Mm-hmm. Good.
All right.
All right. So if we want to open it up to questions.
Yep. Thank you both. We are now beginning the Q&A session of our presentation. If you have a question, please submit them through the chat or question box. Please note, if we do not get to your question during the session, a representative will reach out to you to answer your question directly. Again, a recording of this webinar will be shared with you today after today's presentation. So let's begin. Question number 1, can the alert beacons be used as fire alarm remote triggers for new buildings as a means to save costs?
That one, the Alertus system doesn't replace the fire panel. The fire panel, 95% of the code NFPA requires and dictates exactly how the system is installed, maintained, activated, those kind of things. So the Alertus beacon generally isn't a substitute for that, but we can then install our software and technology, the beacon, to broaden that notification. Make sure that there's more information, more detailed information about, is it a smoke detector, is it a pull station, those kind of things, to disseminate that out so that, instead of people ignoring it or lazily, heading for the doors, they're going to see it was a smoke detector. Yeah, this is probably the real deal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really a substitute, but it extends your notification capabilities and provides higher level communication.
Not only extends, but it can also increase the capabilities, as you said, because what we've seen, at least for a customer that I had recently, is for, I believe it's the International Building Code. I forget exactly what code it is, and if you guys want to know, just email us and I'll get the exact number of that code. But it specifically dictates that any building, I believe, higher than 2 stories needs to have a call box at least in every 3rd floor in the stairwell. So with that being said, the customer that I'm thinking about right now basically reached out to us and wondered, hey, look, does the alert beacon have the capability of having 2-way conversations? We do have a model that does have that capability of having a SIP phone next to it that once the button is pressed, it activates a 2-way communication between that location and whatever the call needs to be placed to. And it also has the added benefit of automatically activating the Alertus system in that facility. So you're not just taking the building code at its word, but you're also increasing it by giving not only the capability of having the 2-way communication that is required by the code, but also allowing it to automatically set off an alert so that people know there's something going on at this location.
And that alert will actually be the exact floor and location of where they picked up the phone. So
exactly.
Instead of having to rely on somebody answering, oh, I'm on the 3rd floor.
I don't know what building I'm in. I think I'm between these 2 floors, but please help.
Yep. Yeah. So the information of exactly where that's located gets disseminated to the first responders as well.
Exactly.
Yep.
Great. As alerts are triggered on the fire panel, how do you control and filter which alerts will be integrated with Alertus?
Sure, that's a great question. So Anytime that the fire panel provides its code, it will provide either a label of alarm or fire. It really depends on the manufacturer. They all have different uses. So it could either be fire or alarm as the first label. It could either be a supervisory condition. It could be a trouble condition. It can be just a reset of the fire panel that we demonstrated earlier. So based on our experience with all the different manufacturers, we'll know exactly what their code's going to be. And if we've never dealt with that fire panel, all we have to do is just be able to read. We'll take in that information. We'll be able to read exactly what they're providing to us, and we'll tailor and configure our system to know exactly when to activate and when not. So to answer your question in a very long turn is it really depends on how and when you want to activate the Alertus system. Some customers only want to activate when there's an alarm on the fire panel. Other customers want to activate when there's alarm, when there's a supervisory condition and a trouble. Obviously, those activations would be different. And then some other people also want to activate when there's a reset, which would mean hopefully an all clear would be sent out as well.
Thank you. Can the overhead speakers that are tied into the fire panel be used or activated as part of an Alertus notification that is not a fire, such as a lockdown situation?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the code NFPA 72, Chapter 24 specifically says that as long as those speakers are not labeled for fire and they're only labeled for alarm or not labeled at all, they can be leveraged by a mass notification system. So all you would have to do is get our system, for instance, the Alertus system, have the Alertus system provide a line level audio signal to that fire panel, which we do provide with our text-to-speech module, and have that fire panel be coded by your fire technician to activate those speakers without activating anything else. And this has been done many times before, so we're very, very certain that it can be done for any other fire panel.
Absolutely, and sitting in on some of the NFPA discussions and that kind of thing, there's a lot of common sense behind why you can use those speakers. Mm-hmm. One, previously the fire alarm was this black box that nobody wanted to touch or know how to use. Well, that was a problem because you needed to be able to use those speakers during an emergency, and you needed people familiar with using them. So I said, well, why don't we open up those speakers to be used on a daily basis so that when it is an emergency, it's second nature, it's easy. There's integrations like Alertus already available that are plugged in, that are ready to go. So it makes it more accessible and usable. Plus, those speakers are backed up. There's a battery backup on it. They're very resilient. Why not use those for other emergencies was the kind of theory behind that. So that's kind of the common sense theory behind the codes on why they decided to open those speakers up for any emergency notification or actually any daily announcement. There's some organizations that they'll use their fire alarm speakers for their standard PA, mm-hmm. but fire will take precedent over any of the other notifications, and that's generally what we run into with using those speakers as well.
And that's actually something that your risk analysis would be able to dictate. It will dictate, okay, you have speakers already available with your fire panel. Clearly, you're using it for a PA system if they're using it at that case. But we want to make sure that the fire panel is coded to always have fire take precedence over that.
Yep.
And then based on the risk analysis, if you're adding in a mass notification system, then it would really determine whether the fire will take precedence or whether the mass notification will take precedence.
Yep.
Sometimes, with some customers, the risk analysis will dictate that the mass notification will take precedence because of active shooters.
Yep.
Fire alarms are great for active shooters. They pull a pull station, and sadly, everyone just knows to go outside. That's something that you don't want for an active shooter. So hopefully, if you have a mass notification system where the risk analysis dictates that the mass notification should take precedence, then the mass notification system will actually deactivate that fire alarm if it happens to be going on, or just stop it from going off if the mass notification system is already going off, and prevent that type of scenario.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I mentioned that DoD facility I was at last week. That's the big challenge. They had an incident like that somebody pulled the fire panel pull station. They don't know if it was the shooter or if it was somebody that was involved in the incident, but still they had to have the control to get the right messages out and the right precedence and those kind of things. And they struggle with that, so we're looking to help them out there.
Good.
Thank you. We have now concluded our Q&A session of our presentation. Again, if we did not get to your question, we will directly reach out to you with an answer. If you have any questions or need additional information, please feel free to email marketing@alertus.com, and we will be happy to assist. If you are looking for more information on Alertus and our solutions, visit our website at www.alertus.com. If you are interested in upcoming webinars, please visit www.alertus.com/webinars to see the full schedule. Thank you for joining today's webinar, and we look forward to meeting you again soon.